Hi guys, the night is quiet. Far above the dark land, countless stars rest across the sky like tiny points of gentle light. The moon hangs low over the wide Nile River, turning the slow water into a ribbon of silver that moves almost without a sound. The warm air carries the faint smell of wet reeds, river mud, and fields that have rested after another long day beneath the Egyptian sun. Everything feels slower now. The birds have settled into the trees. The fishing boats have been pulled onto the soft banks. The voices that filled the villages during daylight have become distant memories, replaced by the soft whisper of insects and the gentle movement of water against the shore. This is the Nile. For thousands of years, this river has quietly carried life through a land where rain almost never falls. It asks for patience. It asks for steady hands. It asks people to rise before the sun and return home only after the evening grows cool again. Tonight, we leave behind the names of great kings and mighty temples for a little while. Instead, we walk beside ordinary people. We follow the farmer who wakes before dawn. The woman who kneads bread while the stars are still visible. The child carrying water from the river. The fisherman repairing his nets in silence. The old scribe whose fingers have become stained with ink after decades of careful writing. These are the people who filled the villages along the Nile. Most never expected history to remember them. Yet together, they created the world that made ancient Egypt possible. As the night slowly passes, one house near the river remains dimly lit. Its walls are made from sun-dried mud bricks. The roof is flat, built from wooden beams covered with reeds and packed earth. During the hottest months, the family often sleeps on top of the roof where a light breeze drifts across the village after sunset. Tonight they sleep inside. Simple woven mats cover the floor. Clay jars stand against one wall, storing grain, oil, and precious drinking water. A small oil lamp burns softly, its tiny flame dancing whenever the night breeze slips through the doorway. Nothing inside this home appears grand. There are no polished marble floors. No shining golden furniture. Only simple wooden stools, baskets filled with onions and dates, rough linen cloth, and tools waiting quietly for tomorrow's work. Outside, the Nile continues its slow journey north. The river never truly sleeps. Long before the first light touches the eastern horizon, someone stirs beneath a linen blanket. The father wakes first. For a few moments he remains still, listening. The village is almost silent. Only distant frogs and the quiet splash of fish disturb the darkness. He rises carefully so he does not wake the youngest child sleeping beside his mother. His feet touch the cool packed earth floor. Soon that coolness will disappear beneath the growing heat of another Egyptian day. He steps outside. The sky has begun to change. A faint line of pale blue appears above the eastern desert. The stars slowly begin to fade. Nearby, another door opens. Then another. Without speaking very much, neighbors greet one another with quiet nods. Everyone understands the rhythm of the morning. There is little need for conversation. The day ahead is already waiting. Women begin grinding grain between heavy stones. The slow scraping sound becomes one of the first voices of the village. Back and forth. Back and forth. Hour after hour. The work requires strong shoulders and patient hands. Fine flour slowly gathers inside shallow bowls made from pottery. Soon the smell of fresh dough begins to drift through the narrow lanes. Bread is one of life's simplest comforts. Almost every meal includes it. The dough is mixed with water from the Nile, shaped by experienced hands, and placed into clay ovens already warming with glowing coals. As the bread bakes, its warm scent spreads gently through the cool morning air. Children begin to wake. Some rub their eyes. Others immediately begin helping. Even the youngest understand that every pair of hands has value. A daughter carries empty jars toward the river. Her sandals leave small prints in the dust. She walks carefully down the familiar path, passing tall reeds that sway gently beside the water. The Nile reflects the growing light of dawn. Its surface remains smooth except where fish briefly disturb it with tiny circles that disappear almost as quickly as they appear. She kneels beside the bank. The water feels cool against her hands. She fills each jar slowly. Water is heavy. She knows exactly how to balance the weight across her shoulders for the walk home. Nearby, fishermen are already awake. Their boats are simple. Wooden planks tied together with careful craftsmanship. Some men check their woven nets. Others untangle ropes while sitting quietly on the edge of the boats. They know every bend of the river, every patch of reeds, every place where fish often gather before sunrise. The river has taught these lessons over many years. No one rushes. There is time. There must always be time. The Nile rewards patience more often than speed. Back in the village, smoke rises gently from dozens of cooking fires. Breakfast is simple. Fresh bread, onions, figs, dates, sometimes cheese, sometimes beans cooked slowly inside clay pots. The meal is modest. Yet after many generations, its familiar taste brings comfort every morning. Soon the fields begin calling. Farmers lift wooden tools onto their shoulders. Oxen are led from small shelters. Their slow footsteps stir tiny clouds of dust. The path toward the fields is well known. Every family has walked it countless times. The eastern sky grows brighter. Sunlight begins touching the tops of the date palms. Within minutes the warmth arrives. Then more warmth. Before long the cool air of dawn becomes only a memory. The fields stretch across the rich black soil left behind by the Nile's annual flood. This dark earth is precious. Beyond it waits endless desert. Golden sand reaches toward distant hills where almost nothing grows. But here, beside the river, life flourishes. Barley waves gently in the breeze. Wheat stands tall. Flax grows for making linen. Vegetables fill carefully tended gardens. Every harvest depends upon the river's kindness. Farmers bend over their work. Hands pull weeds. Wooden hoes loosen the soil. Water channels guide precious river water toward thirsty crops. The work is steady. Not hurried. Not slow. Simply continuous. Sweat begins forming before the morning is very old. The Egyptian sun climbs higher. Its heat settles across the fields like a heavy blanket. Linen clothing helps, but only a little. The workers pause now and then to wipe their faces. Clay water jars stand beneath small patches of shade whenever possible. Each drink feels refreshing. Only for a moment. Soon the heat returns. Nearby, birds search for insects among the growing plants. White egrets walk gracefully through shallow water. Their movements are patient. Almost peaceful. They have shared this landscape with people for longer than anyone can remember. Closer to the village, craftsmen begin opening their workshops. A potter kneads wet clay with practiced hands. The cool earth presses between his fingers. Slowly, carefully, he shapes a simple bowl upon a spinning wheel. It begins as nothing more than soft mud. Little by little, it becomes something useful. Something that may remain inside a family's home for many years. Across the lane, a carpenter smooths rough wood with a bronze blade. Wood is valuable here. Large trees are uncommon. Every piece must be used wisely. Nothing is wasted if it can still serve another purpose. Nearby, a young apprentice watches carefully. He says little. Learning begins with observation. His teacher's hands explain more than words ever could. A short distance away, the village scribe has already begun his day's work. His room is cooler than the fields. Papyrus scrolls rest neatly upon wooden shelves. Small cakes of black and red ink wait beside sharpened reed pens. The scribe dips his pen carefully. Every stroke matters. Every mark carries meaning. Few people know how to read or write. Those who do spend many years learning. The work demands patience. Mistakes cannot simply be erased. Outside, life continues flowing like the river itself. Children chase one another through narrow lanes before being called back to their chores. Goats wander between homes. A donkey carries baskets filled with vegetables toward a nearby market. Women sit together weaving linen thread into cloth. Their fingers move with quiet confidence. The gentle rhythm of weaving seems almost like breathing. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. Hours pass this way. The sun climbs higher still. By midday, shadows grow short. The heat becomes heavy enough that even the birds seem quieter. Many workers pause briefly beneath whatever shade they can find. A sycamore tree. A simple shelter made from reeds. The side of a mud brick wall. Lunch is modest. Bread once again. Perhaps dried fish. Perhaps lentils. A handful of dates. Fresh water. No feast is needed. Only enough strength to continue through the afternoon. The village settles into a slower rhythm. Even conversation becomes softer. The air itself feels warm enough to slow every movement. Far away, somewhere beyond the fields, another boat glides quietly along the Nile. Its square linen sail catches a gentle breeze moving south. The river carries merchants, travelers, messages, grain, stone, and stories from village to village. Yet here, beside these familiar fields, the people remain focused on today's work. Tomorrow will bring its own labor. Next season will bring another flood. Another planting. Another harvest. Life beside the Nile is built from countless ordinary days, each one flowing gently into the next, as steady and dependable as the quiet river itself. The afternoon slowly leans toward evening, though the warmth of the day is not yet ready to leave. The sun hangs above the western desert, its light turning softer with each passing moment. Long shadows begin to stretch across the fields, reaching between rows of grain and along the narrow paths that connect one small village to the next. The air is still warm, but it no longer feels as heavy as it did beneath the bright light of midday. The people notice the change without speaking of it. Their hands continue moving, yet their bodies begin to relax in small ways. Shoulders loosen. Breathing becomes easier. The promise of evening brings quiet comfort after many hours beneath the open sky. Near the river, a pair of oxen pull a simple wooden plow through soil that has already begun to dry after the last flood. Their steady footsteps leave deep marks in the earth. The farmer guiding them does not hurry. He has learned that rushing only brings more tiredness. The work is measured, each step matching the next in a rhythm that has filled this valley for generations beyond memory. The smell of fresh earth rises whenever the plow cuts into the ground. It is a rich scent, dark and clean, carrying the life left behind by the Nile. Tiny birds follow behind, searching for insects disturbed by the turning soil. They hop lightly across the furrows, pausing every few moments before fluttering ahead again. The farmer notices them with a small smile. They have always been there. His father watched the same birds. His grandfather likely did as well. Some things along the Nile change very little. Farther downstream, fishermen guide their narrow boats toward patches of quiet water where tall reeds grow thick along the banks. The reeds sway gently, whispering whenever the breeze passes through them. The men lower their woven nets carefully. Every movement is calm. The ropes slide through practiced hands polished smooth by years of labor. The boats drift almost silently, carried by the gentle current while the fishermen wait with patient eyes fixed upon the water. Waiting has become part of their craft. No one expects the river to hurry. The Nile moves at its own pace, and those who depend upon it have learned to do the same. Sometimes a fish breaks the surface with a soft splash. Small circles spread across the water before disappearing into perfect stillness once more. A kingfisher dives from a low branch. Its wings flash briefly in the sunlight before it disappears among the reeds with its catch. For a moment, everything becomes quiet again. The river seems to breathe. Not far away, children gather smooth stones along the shoreline. Their laughter rises gently into the warm air before fading just as quickly. They search for interesting shells, pieces of driftwood, and feathers left behind by water birds. Their games are simple. One child skips a flat stone across the calm surface of the river. Another watches tiny fish dart between clusters of reeds. They know not to wander too far from home. The river gives life, but everyone understands it deserves respect. Back in the village, the scent of baking bread begins to return. Clay ovens glow softly beneath careful fires. Women knead fresh dough inside wide pottery bowls worn smooth by many years of use. Their hands move without hesitation, folding and pressing the dough with quiet confidence. Flour clings lightly to their fingers. A young girl watches her mother work. She imitates each movement with her own smaller hands, sometimes laughing when the soft dough sticks to her fingers. Her mother smiles but says very little. Learning often happens this way. Not through long lessons. Simply by watching. Simply by doing. Generation after generation, these quiet moments pass from parent to child like the steady flow of the river itself. Nearby, an elderly man sits beneath the shade of a sycamore tree repairing woven baskets. His fingers are slower than they once were, yet they remain steady. He bends strips of palm fiber one over another, tightening each weave with careful pressure. Every basket must carry grain, vegetables, or tools. A weak basket serves no one. He does not rush. The afternoon offers enough time. Occasionally, neighbors stop to greet him. Their conversations are gentle. They speak about the river's water level. They speak about tomorrow's work. They wonder whether the coming flood will arrive early or late. No one raises their voice. The village has settled into the peaceful rhythm that often comes before sunset. A little farther along the dusty lane, the village scribe rolls open a fresh sheet of papyrus. The room around him is simple. Light enters through a small opening near the roof, falling across the wooden table where ink and reed pens wait patiently. He writes slowly. Each mark is neat. Lists of grain. Records of storage jars. Names of families. Measurements of harvested crops. These careful records help the village remember what memory alone may someday forget. Outside his doorway, life continues without interruption. Goats wander lazily through patches of shade. A donkey shakes its ears while carrying empty baskets home from the fields. Two women carry heavy water jars balanced upon folded cloth resting on their heads. Their steps are smooth and practiced, requiring almost no effort beyond long years of experience. The jars do not sway. The water inside barely ripples. As the afternoon continues to soften, the light begins changing color. The bright white sky slowly becomes pale gold. The desert hills beyond the valley seem quieter now. Their distant shapes appear softer beneath the lowering sun. Palm trees cast long shadows that stretch across the fields toward the river. The day's hardest labor is nearly finished. One by one, workers gather their tools. Wooden hoes rest upon tired shoulders. Bundles of flax are tied neatly with cord. Small baskets filled with onions, beans, and herbs begin their journey back toward the village. Feet move more slowly than they did at dawn. Muscles ache. Hands are rough from soil, rope, and stone. Yet there is satisfaction in honest work completed before darkness falls. As the first cool breath of evening finally reaches the valley, people lift their faces toward the breeze almost without thinking. It carries the scent of fresh water. It moves softly through the reeds. For a few precious moments, the heat loosens its hold on the land. The Nile continues its quiet journey north, reflecting the golden light of the sinking sun, just as it has done for countless evenings before this one. Along its banks, another ordinary day gently prepares to become another peaceful night, while life continues in the same calm rhythm that has carried generations of families from one sunrise to the next. The evening arrives slowly, like a soft cloth being drawn across the sky. The heat of the day begins to loosen its grip on the land. It does not leave all at once. It fades in stages, first from the shaded corners of the village, then from the open fields, and finally from the stones that have held sunlight since morning. The air becomes easier to breathe. A quiet comfort settles over everything near the Nile. The river reflects the changing sky with gentle patience. Gold turns into pale ember. Pale ember turns into soft blue. And above it all, the first stars begin to appear, faint at first, as if they are unsure whether to return yet. The water carries these reflections without effort, flowing as it always does, steady and unchanged by the passing of time. Along the riverbank, people move more slowly now. Boats are pulled further onto land, their wooden frames resting against the earth. Nets are hung carefully to dry, stretched between poles like woven shadows. Fishermen sit nearby for a while, not speaking much, simply watching the water as if it might still tell them something before night fully arrives. Their bodies are tired. Their hands are rough from rope and wood and water. But there is a quiet ease in this kind of tiredness, the kind that comes from work that feels familiar, almost like breathing. In the village, cooking fires begin to glow. Not large fires, not dramatic ones. Just small, steady flames built for evening meals. Smoke rises gently and drifts between mud-brick homes, carrying the scent of grain, lentils, and warm bread. Clay pots sit close to the heat, slowly turning simple ingredients into food that will be shared without hurry. A woman stirs a pot with a wooden spoon worn smooth by years of use. She watches the surface carefully, not because she expects anything to change quickly, but because this is how the rhythm of cooking is learned. Nothing in the village asks for speed at this hour. Everything asks for attention, patience, and quiet hands. Inside another home, a family gathers on woven mats spread across the cool floor. The children sit close together, their energy slowly softening after a long day. Dust still clings lightly to their feet and legs. Their voices are quieter now, as if the evening itself encourages them to speak gently. A piece of bread is broken and shared. Simple food, eaten slowly. No one rushes. Outside, the sky continues its slow transformation. The last light of the sun disappears beyond the western desert. The horizon holds a faint glow for a while longer, a soft memory of daylight that lingers just above the land before finally fading into dusk. The fields near the river grow still. Tall grasses no longer move as actively in the breeze. Birds settle into trees, their calls becoming fewer until only occasional sounds remain. The landscape, so full of movement during the day, now rests in quiet layers. Far from the village center, an old man walks slowly along a narrow path beside the water. He does not carry anything. He is not returning from work. He simply walks. His steps are unhurried, almost measured by memory rather than intention. He looks out over the Nile, watching the way it moves even in darkness, always moving, always continuing forward without hesitation. He has seen many seasons pass along this river. Many floods. Many harvests. Many evenings like this one. And yet each night still carries its own calm weight, as if time itself becomes softer when the sun is gone. Behind him, the village begins to glow faintly with oil lamps. Small points of light appear in doorways and windows. Each flame is protected by clay or glass, shielding it from the evening breeze. The light does not reach far, but it is enough. Enough to cook. Enough to see faces. Enough to remind people that they are together in the quiet. A scribe sits at his wooden table for a little longer. The day's records are nearly complete. His hand moves carefully across the papyrus, adding final marks before setting the reed pen aside. The ink dries slowly in the warm air. He leans back for a moment, rubbing his fingers as if to release the weight of small, precise work. Outside his window, the sounds of the village soften. Footsteps fade. Conversations become fewer. The night is arriving fully now. Near the river, water laps gently against the shore. It is a sound that never truly stops, even when everything else becomes still. The Nile continues its endless movement through darkness, carrying with it the memory of distant lands, quiet fields, and villages that depend upon its steady presence. A fisherman, now sitting alone by his boat, listens to it for a long time. He is not thinking of anything in particular. Just listening. Just resting. Above him, the sky is now deep and dark. Stars are no longer rare points of light but a wide scattering across the heavens. The moon, if present, casts a soft glow over the water, turning parts of the river into pale silver pathways that shift with every small wave. In the homes, people prepare for sleep. Mats are arranged. Clay jars are placed within reach. Children are guided gently to lie down. The sounds of the village slowly fade into silence, one by one, like candles being carefully extinguished. And as the night settles fully over the land, the Nile continues its slow and constant journey, unchanged, as it has always been, carrying the quiet of the day into the deeper stillness of darkness. Night settles fully over the Nile, not suddenly, but in a slow and natural way, as if the land itself is learning how to become quiet again. The last traces of daylight are gone now. Only the moon remains, soft and steady, resting above the river like a calm watchful eye. Its light is not sharp. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, touching the water in pale silver shapes that move gently with the current. The village is quieter than it has been all day. Most oil lamps have been dimmed or placed carefully inside clay holders. Their small flames still flicker, but they feel distant now, like memories of warmth rather than sources of light. Inside the homes, people lie down on woven mats, their bodies finally released from the long weight of labor. The air has cooled slightly. Not enough to feel cold. Just enough to feel kind. Outside, along the riverbank, a few fishermen remain awake a little longer. They sit beside their boats, not speaking, simply watching the water. The Nile at night is different. It feels deeper, slower, as if it carries more silence than movement. A net is folded carefully and placed beside a wooden frame. Another man checks a rope by touch alone, his fingers remembering every knot without needing light. These small tasks are done without hurry. Nothing urgent remains for the night. Only small acts of preparation for tomorrow, and even those are carried out gently, almost thoughtfully. Farther inland, the fields rest under the dark sky. The crops are no longer visible in detail, only as soft shapes against the earth. The wind moves through them lightly, creating a sound that is almost like breathing. It rises and falls, never loud enough to disturb the stillness, but present enough to remind the land that it is alive even in sleep. A dog lies near the edge of a home, curled into itself, its head resting on its paws. It opens its eyes once, then closes them again. There is no need to stay alert. The village is safe in its familiarity. Inside one small house, a mother adjusts a thin cloth over her child. The child is already half asleep, breathing slowly, the day's energy finally gone from their small body. The mother sits beside them for a moment longer, listening to the quiet rhythm of sleep forming in the room. She does not speak. There is nothing to say. In another home, an old man remains awake for a while longer. He lies on his back, looking toward the dark ceiling made of wooden beams and reeds. His thoughts move slowly, not in sharp memories, but in soft impressions. The sound of the river. The smell of baked bread. The feeling of early morning air before the sun rises. His life has been shaped by these things more than anything else. The Nile has always been present in every season of his years. Outside, the river continues without pause. It does not change for night or day. It does not become tired. It does not rest. It simply moves forward, carrying water from distant lands, passing villages that sleep beside it, and continuing toward places unseen in the darkness. A small boat drifts near the shore, tied loosely so it will not be carried away. It rocks gently with the water. Back and forth. Back and forth. A simple motion that feels almost like a lullaby for the river itself. Above, the stars remain steady. They do not move in any way that can be seen with the eye. They only shift slowly over hours, over nights, over lifetimes. For those below, they feel permanent, as if they have always been there and always will be. The wind passes once through the palm trees near the village. The leaves respond with a soft rustling sound, brief and light, then settle again into stillness. One by one, the small sounds of the night fade. A distant frog near the water. A final shifting of cloth inside a home. A quiet breath from someone turning in sleep. Until only the Nile remains clearly present, moving through the darkness with patient certainty. And in this stillness, the village rests completely. Not frozen. Not empty. Just held gently in the calm of night, surrounded by fields, desert, stars, and the river that has carried life here for longer than memory can hold. The night deepens further, reaching a quiet that feels almost complete. The Nile moves through the darkness with the same steady patience it carried through the day, but now it feels softer, as if the sound of its current belongs more to memory than to the present moment. The river is still there, still flowing, but everything around it has grown quieter, allowing even the smallest sounds to be noticed more clearly. In the village, sleep has settled over nearly every home. Bodies rest on woven mats laid across cool floors. Some people sleep on their sides. Some lie on their backs, arms relaxed, faces turned slightly toward the faint light that slips through cracks in the walls. The heat of the day is gone, and what remains is a gentle coolness that makes rest easier, deeper. Breathing becomes slow and even. One by one, the village lets go of its awareness. Outside, the sand and soil hold the memory of countless footsteps from earlier in the day. Paths that were full of movement now lie still. Even the dust seems to have settled more firmly, as if it too has decided to rest until morning returns. A few oil lamps still burn in distant corners of the settlement. Their light is small, carefully protected. In one home, a lamp sits near a sleeping family, its flame barely moving, casting soft shadows that stretch and shrink against the walls. The glow is warm but weak, like a quiet heartbeat that keeps the darkness from becoming complete. Near the riverbank, a lone fisherman remains awake. He sits beside his boat, not working now, only waiting. His hands rest on his knees. His gaze follows the faint movement of water where moonlight touches the surface. He has spent so many nights like this that time feels less important than silence. The river speaks in its own way at night. Not with words. Not with sound that demands attention. But with a steady presence that feels older than anything around it. The fisherman listens without thinking. The rhythm of water against wood. The soft pull of current along the shore. The occasional shift of reeds bending slightly in the breeze. All of it is familiar. All of it is enough. A little farther inland, the fields lie in complete stillness. The crops are resting now, their forms blending into the darkness. The soil beneath them holds moisture from earlier irrigation, slowly cooling as the night continues. The work of the day has ended, and for a short time, the land itself seems to breathe more easily. A small animal moves through the grass. It is unseen at first, only a faint rustle breaking the silence for a moment before fading again. The night is full of such quiet life, hidden and gentle, moving carefully through the world without disturbing it. Above everything, the sky stretches wide and unchanged. The stars remain scattered across it like distant lights that never burn out. The moon, if it is present, continues its slow passage, casting pale reflections across the Nile that shift and disappear as the water moves. There is no rush in the sky. No urgency. Only distance and calm. Inside one home near the center of the village, an old woman wakes briefly. Not from fear or disturbance, but simply from the natural rhythm of sleep that comes and goes with age. She sits up slowly, listening to the silence around her. Her eyes adjust to the dimness inside the room. She reaches for a small clay jar and drinks a little water. The coolness helps her settle again. For a moment, she remains awake, aware of the stillness that surrounds everything. She hears no voices. No footsteps. No movement outside. Only the faintest presence of the wind passing through the reeds. She lies back down. Sleep returns gently. Not quickly. Not suddenly. But like something that has always been there, waiting patiently. Along the river, the tide boats continue their quiet rocking. Each one moves slightly with the water, never drifting far, never colliding, always held in place by ropes that have been secured with care. The motion is repetitive and calming, like a slow rhythm meant for nights that stretch on without interruption. The Nile itself feels endless in this moment. Not because it is fast, but because it never seems to stop. It flows through darkness as easily as it flows through daylight, carrying the same steady purpose through every hour of every season. Far away, beyond the village, the desert lies silent. Its vast open spaces hold no sound at all now. Sand rests in soft shapes shaped by wind that has already passed. The dunes do not move in this moment. They simply exist, watching the night unfold without change. Back in the village, even the smallest sounds fade away. A final shift of fabric. A soft sigh of sleep. A distant ripple in the river. Then silence again. And in this silence, everything feels held together by something gentle and unseen. The homes, the fields, the river, the people, all resting within the same quiet night. The Nile continues its slow passage through the dark land, steady and unbroken, as if it has always known the way forward, even when everything else is still. The night has settled into its deepest hour now, when even the idea of movement feels distant. The Nile flows on, but its sound is softened by the thickness of darkness. It is no longer something that stands out clearly to the ear. It becomes part of everything else, blending into the night air, into the wind, into the quiet spaces between sleeping homes. The village rests more completely than before. No one is walking now. No one is speaking. Even the smallest traces of evening activity have faded away. What remains is the still presence of life in its most peaceful form, where everything is paused but nothing is absent. Inside the mud-brick homes, sleep has deepened. People lie in simple arrangements across woven mats, their bodies relaxed in ways only sleep allows. The warmth of the day has long since left their skin. What remains is the gentle coolness of night air moving through small cracks in the walls and roofs. Occasionally, someone shifts slightly in their sleep. A hand loosens its grip on a folded cloth. A child turns closer to a parent. Then stillness returns again, as if the movement had never happened. Outside, the riverbank is almost entirely empty. The boats rest in place, tied with ropes that hold them gently against the slow current. They rise and fall just slightly, in a rhythm so soft it is almost invisible. The water touches the shore again and again, never with force, only with repetition, like a quiet reminder that it is still there. A faint mist begins to gather near the surface of the Nile. It is thin, barely visible, moving slowly across the water like breath rising from something sleeping. It softens the outlines of reeds and makes the far side of the river appear distant, as if it belongs to another world. In this mist, the river feels larger. Not louder. Not faster. Just wider, as though it stretches farther into the dark than the eye can understand. A single night bird calls once from somewhere near the reeds. The sound is brief and simple. It does not echo. It does not repeat. It simply appears and then disappears into the silence again, leaving the night unchanged. Far from the village, the fields remain still under the sky. The crops stand motionless, their shapes barely visible in the faint light. The soil beneath them holds the memory of water and labor, now resting until morning returns. No one is tending them, yet they feel watched over by the slow passage of time itself. The wind moves gently across the land. It passes over open ground, through palm groves, along narrow paths, and then toward the river. It does not stay in any one place. It simply moves through everything, soft and unnoticed, like a breath shared by the entire landscape. Inside one home, a small oil lamp flickers for a final time before being extinguished. The room becomes darker, but not frightening. The darkness here is familiar. It belongs. It wraps itself around the sleeping figures without pressure, like a blanket that has always been there. Now only faint light from the moon remains, and even that is softened by thin drifting clouds that pass slowly overhead. The sky feels very high tonight. Very distant. Very calm. In the village, dreams have taken over fully. People no longer feel the weight of the day. Their bodies are carried somewhere quieter, somewhere beyond the sound of the river and the wind. Even the thought of waking feels far away. The old man near the edge of the village sleeps now as well. His breathing is slow and steady. His face is relaxed in a way that only deep rest allows. The lines of his life remain, but they are softened in sleep, as if even time itself has decided to pause around him. The Nile continues without change. It does not remember the day. It does not anticipate the morning. It simply moves forward, as it always has, carrying water through darkness that never truly interrupts its journey. In this hour, everything feels connected by silence. The river, the fields, the desert, the village, all resting under the same wide sky, all held within the same quiet night. And as the darkness reaches its most complete stillness, there is only the gentle presence of the Nile, flowing onward through the sleeping world, steady and unending, like time itself moving softly through the land. The night reaches its final depth, the kind of darkness that feels almost still enough to touch. Everything along the Nile is quiet now in a way that feels complete, as if the world has gently folded itself inward and chosen rest. The river continues its slow movement, but even it seems quieter than before, its presence softened by distance and shadow. The village remains asleep. No lamps burn now. No voices rise. No footsteps disturb the packed earth paths between homes. The mud-brick houses sit closely together, their shapes blending into the night so that only outlines can be guessed beneath the faint light of the sky. Inside, people sleep without interruption. Breathing is slow. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands rest loosely beside woven mats or folded cloth. There is no urgency anywhere, not even in thought. The day has been fully released, and what remains is only rest. Outside the village, the Nile moves through darkness with steady patience. Its surface is no longer fully visible, but the sound of it remains present in a quiet way, like a distant memory of water. The current carries on without resistance, as it always does, touching the banks with soft repetition that never changes. A small ripple spreads near the shore where a boat shifts slightly against its rope. Then everything returns to stillness again. The reeds along the river stand motionless, their tall forms barely visible in the faint light. They have been shaped by countless seasons of flood and dryness, yet tonight they do not move at all. They simply remain, listening to the wind that passes above them without sound. Far inland, the fields rest beneath the sky. The crops are hidden now, their outlines softened into the earth. The soil holds the memory of all the work that shaped it throughout the day. Hoes, footsteps, water channels, and careful hands have all left their marks, now quiet and unseen in the dark. A distant animal moves somewhere beyond the fields. It does not appear clearly. Only a faint shift in the night suggests its passing. Then even that is gone. Above everything, the sky stretches endlessly. The stars remain fixed in their silent arrangement, scattered across a vast darkness that never seems to change. The moon, pale and steady, continues its slow journey, casting a faint glow that touches the Nile in broken reflections. The water responds gently, never holding still, never breaking its rhythm. In one home near the river, a child stirs slightly in sleep. A small movement. A quiet breath. Then stillness again. Beside them, a parent remains asleep, their presence steady and calm, offering a sense of quiet protection even in rest. The room is dark, but not empty. It holds warmth, familiarity, and the soft sound of shared sleep. Farther along the village path, an old man lies awake for a brief moment. Not fully awake. Not fully asleep. Just in that quiet space between, where thoughts are slow and light. He listens without meaning to, aware of nothing specific, only the presence of the night around him. Then sleep returns again, gently, without effort. Along the riverbank, the tide boats continue their slow, almost unnoticeable motion. Back and forth. Back and forth. The movement is so soft it feels like part of the river's breathing rather than something separate from it. The ropes hold them safely in place, and the water carries them through the smallest motions of the current. The Nile does not hurry. It never has. It moves through the night as it moves through every hour, carrying the same steady life through darkness that never interrupts its journey. And as the deepest part of night holds everything in its quiet embrace, the land beside the river remains still and resting, surrounded by fields, desert, and sky, all softened under the same calm silence that stretches gently across the ancient world. The night begins to shift, though it is still dark. Not by much. Not in any way that would wake the village or change the silence. It is a subtle turning, a slow movement in the sky that only time itself seems to notice. The darkness is still deep, still complete, but somewhere beyond the horizon, the night is quietly beginning to give way. The Nile continues its steady path. In the darkness, it feels almost invisible, yet it is always there, always moving. The sound of water against the shore is faint, like something heard in a half-dream. It does not interrupt the silence. It belongs to it. The village remains asleep. The homes stand close together, holding warmth inside their mud-brick walls. No lamps are lit now. No fires burn. Only the natural warmth of sleeping bodies and the cool breath of night air passing through small openings in the structures. Inside one home, a family sleeps in stillness. The children are quiet, their breathing soft and even. The parents rest nearby, their bodies relaxed after a long day of labor. Nothing moves except the gentle rise and fall of sleep. Outside, the wind shifts slightly. It moves across the river first, then over the reeds, then through the fields beyond. It is not strong. It does not pull or push. It simply passes through the land like a quiet traveler who disturbs nothing along the way. The reeds respond with the smallest rustle, then become still again. The river reflects what little light remains in the sky. The moon is now lower, its glow thinner, as if it too is resting before the coming change of morning. The water holds this light briefly, then releases it as the surface moves onward. Near the riverbank, a single boat remains slightly more active in its motion than the others. It rocks gently, not because of force, but because of the river's constant, subtle movement. The rope that holds it has become damp with the night air, softening its texture. Still, it holds firm, keeping the boat close to shore. Everything here is patient. Everything is familiar. Far from the village, the fields are completely still. The soil, dark and rich, rests after a full day of tending. The plants stand quietly, their shapes barely visible in the darkness. There is no sound of work now, no movement of tools or footsteps along narrow paths. Only the memory of the day remains. In the village, sleep grows even deeper. The kind of sleep that does not shift easily. The kind that settles into the body like warmth. A man turns slightly on his mat, then becomes still again. A woman adjusts the cloth covering her shoulder, then continues sleeping without awareness. These small movements are not interruptions. They are part of rest itself. The night holds them gently. Above, the sky continues its slow transformation. The stars remain, but there is a subtle feeling that the darkness is thinning, even if the eye cannot yet see it. The horizon holds a faint softness, a quiet suggestion that the world is slowly preparing to change. But nothing rushes. Nothing breaks the calm. The Nile flows on, unchanged. It has seen countless nights like this. Nights that begin in darkness and end in light. Nights that stretch across generations without ever losing their rhythm. The river carries them all the same way, without memory of beginning or end. Along its banks, life rests completely. The fisherman sleeps now beside his boat. The farmer rests in his home. The scribe's work has long been finished. The children are deep in dreams. And the old man near the edge of the village lies still, his breathing slow and steady, as if matching the rhythm of the river itself. The world feels suspended in quiet balance. Not frozen. Not ending. Just resting between one moment and the next. And as the deepest part of the night begins its gentle turning toward what will one day become morning, the Nile continues to move through the darkness with patient certainty, carrying the sleeping land forward without sound, without haste, and without ever stopping. The night begins to soften in its own quiet way, though everything still remains wrapped in darkness. It is not yet morning. Not even close. But something in the air has changed, almost unnoticeable, like a slow turning of the world that no one has asked for and no one needs to see. The sky still holds its deep color, but it no longer feels as heavy as before. The Nile continues to move. Always the same. Always steady. Its presence is felt more than it is seen now, a familiar force that carries on through the sleeping land. The water touches the shore with a soft, repeating rhythm, never urgent, never loud, just constant enough to remind the night that it is still alive. The village remains still. Inside the homes, sleep is uninterrupted. The mats, the clay walls, the woven baskets, the resting bodies, all of it is held in the same gentle silence. The darkness inside each home is complete, yet familiar, like a blanket that has been used for many years. No one wakes. No one moves with intention. Only the natural shifting of sleep passes through the rooms. Outside, the wind returns briefly. It moves across the river first, carrying a faint coolness that was not present earlier in the night. It passes through the reeds, causing a soft rustling sound that rises and falls almost immediately, like a whisper that does not wish to be heard. Then it moves inland. Across fields. Across paths. Across the quiet spaces between homes. And then it fades again. The river reflects less light now. The moon has shifted lower, its glow becoming more distant, as if it is preparing to leave the night behind. The water still catches it, but only in broken, fading shapes that drift apart as soon as they form. Near the shore, a thin line of mist lingers above the surface. It is light and slow, moving in soft layers that follow the river's direction. It makes the water look deeper than it is, and the opposite bank more distant than it truly is. Everything near the river feels slightly softened by it, as if the world is being gently blurred by sleep itself. A fish breaks the surface once. A small movement. A quick ripple. Then nothing again. The silence returns as if it had never been disturbed. In the village, a few sleepers breathe more deeply, settling further into rest as the night reaches its most still point. There is no awareness of time here. No sense of passing hours. Only the feeling of being held gently within something quiet and unchanging. The old man near the edge of the village shifts slightly. Not waking. Only adjusting. His face remains calm, his breathing even. The years he has lived seem to rest quietly within him, not as weight, but as familiarity. The night surrounds him without pressure, and he remains part of it, just as everything else does. Farther away, the fields remain unchanged. The crops stand in their places, rooted in soil that has carried countless seasons. No movement disturbs them now. No footsteps pass between them. The land rests as fully as the people who tend it. Even the desert beyond the fields feels stiller than before. Its vast emptiness holds no sound, no motion, only the presence of distance itself. The dunes lie unchanged under the faint light, shaped by winds that are no longer moving. The Nile, however, continues without pause. It does not respond to silence or change in the sky. It does not grow tired or quiet. It simply flows, as it always has, carrying water through darkness, through stillness, through every hour that passes without needing to be noticed. And in this deep, quiet hour, everything feels suspended together. The village, the fields, the river, the sky, all resting in the same gentle silence, held within a night that is slowly, almost imperceptibly, beginning its long and quiet turn toward morning, while the Nile continues its endless journey through the sleeping world. The night grows thinner now, not in sound, but in feeling. It is still dark across the land, still quiet, still deeply resting, yet there is a subtle softness in the air that was not there before. The kind of softness that belongs to the hours just before dawn, when the world has not yet woken, but no longer feels completely still in the same way. The Nile continues to flow. Always steady. Always unchanged. Its movement is quiet enough that it feels like part of the night itself, not something separate from it. The water carries the last reflections of stars across its surface, broken gently by ripples that appear and fade without urgency. Along the banks, the mist remains, though it has grown slightly thinner. It drifts in slow layers above the river, moving as if it remembers the shape of the water beneath it. The reeds along the shore stand unmoving, their silhouettes faint in the dim light, waiting for the first clear sign of morning. The village is still asleep. No fires burn now. No lamps remain lit. Only the memory of warmth lingers inside the homes, held within clay walls and woven mats where bodies rest without disturbance. Sleep is deeper now in some places, lighter in others, but everywhere it remains calm. A child stirs briefly. A small shift of movement. A quiet breath. Then stillness again, as if the moment never happened. Outside, the wind returns for a final time during the night. It is gentler than before, almost hesitant. It moves across the river first, then through the fields, then between the homes. It carries no dust, no sound of urgency, only coolness and a faint sense of change. It passes through the village and disappears into the desert beyond. The sky above begins to show the slightest hint of transition. Not color yet. Not light. Only a faint lessening of darkness, so subtle it could be mistaken for imagination. The stars are still visible, still scattered across the vast sky, but they feel slightly less sharp than before, as if the distance between earth and sky is becoming softer. The moon continues its slow descent, now closer to the horizon. Its reflection on the Nile stretches longer, thinner, broken into delicate lines that shift with every movement of water. It no longer feels dominant in the sky. It feels like it is preparing to leave the night behind. Near the riverbank, a boat shifts once. A small movement in its rope. Then stillness returns immediately. The sound blends back into silence so completely that it is almost forgotten. Inside the village, the old rhythm of sleep continues. Breathing. Resting. Quiet presence. A few people turn slightly in their sleep, adjusting to the cooling air that comes with the later hours of night. These movements are soft and unconscious, like the natural shifting of leaves when wind passes through a tree. There is no awareness of time here. Only rest. Far beyond the fields, the desert remains still and endless. But even there, something subtle has changed. The darkness is no longer as absolute as it was earlier. It feels slightly more open, as if the horizon itself is beginning to prepare for light. The Nile carries on through it all. Through darkness that is beginning to loosen. Through silence that is beginning to soften. Through a world that is still sleeping but slowly approaching wakefulness. It does not change its rhythm. It does not pause. It simply continues forward, as it always has, through night and toward morning, through stillness and toward life, carrying the village, the fields, and the ancient land beside it in a quiet flow that never ends, never rushes, and never forgets its way. The night is still here, but it feels different now in a way that cannot be clearly seen, only sensed. Everything remains quiet. Everything remains still. Yet the darkness itself no longer feels as heavy as it once did. It has begun to loosen, like fabric slowly releasing its tightness after being held for too long. The Nile continues its endless movement. It flows without pause, without effort, without attention to the passing of hours. The water carries the faint memory of the night sky above it, though the stars now appear slightly dimmer, as if they are quietly stepping back to make room for what is coming. Along the riverbanks, the mist has grown thinner. It no longer covers the water in soft layers. Instead, it hovers in scattered patches, drifting gently and breaking apart whenever the air shifts. The outlines of reeds begin to appear more clearly now, their tall shapes emerging from the darkness like quiet witnesses to the changing night. The village remains asleep. But sleep itself feels different in these moments. It is no longer the deep, heavy stillness of the middle of the night. It has become lighter, softer, as if the world is beginning to prepare itself for return. People still rest fully, still unaware, but the atmosphere around them carries a quiet sense of transition. Inside one home, a man breathes deeply and turns onto his side. The movement is slow, natural, unthinking. His hand rests against the woven mat beneath him. His face is calm, unchanged. He does not wake. He simply adjusts within sleep, as many do when the night begins to shift. Nearby, a child curls closer to warmth without opening their eyes. The room remains dark, but the darkness is no longer absolute. A faint suggestion of space appears between shadows, a subtle opening that did not exist earlier in the night. Outside, the wind returns again, but only briefly. It moves softly across the river, touching the surface with a gentle coolness. The water responds with small ripples that spread outward and disappear just as quickly. The movement is delicate, almost hesitant, as if even the wind is uncertain about disturbing the quiet. Then it fades. And silence returns. Above the land, the sky continues its slow transformation. The stars are still present, still scattered across the vastness above, but they no longer feel as sharp or distant as before. There is a softness to them now, a faint dissolving at the edges that suggests the night is losing its deepest strength. The horizon holds a faint, nearly invisible glow. Not yet color. Not yet light. Only a quiet suggestion that the world beyond the darkness is beginning to awaken. The moon sits lower still, its presence more distant with each passing moment. Its reflection on the Nile is stretched thin now, broken into gentle fragments that drift across the water like fading threads of light. The river itself remains unchanged. It does not hurry toward morning. It does not slow for night. It simply continues, steady and patient, as it has always done, carrying water through every hour without resistance. Farther inland, the fields begin to feel slightly more defined. Shapes emerge where before there was only darkness. The outlines of crops, paths, and small rises in the earth become faintly visible as the sky lightens by the smallest degree. Nothing moves there. Everything remains at rest. But the land is no longer fully hidden. Even the desert beyond begins to soften. Its emptiness is still vast, still silent, but the edges of its dunes are less lost in darkness now. They appear as quiet forms waiting for the first full arrival of light. In the village, sleep continues. But it is no longer the sleep of deep night. It has become the sleep of nearing dawn. Gentle. Light. Almost ready to release. A few people shift again, not waking, but sensing nothing consciously, only the natural rhythm of bodies that prepare themselves for morning without awareness. The old man near the edge of the village lies still, his breathing steady. He does not move. But the night around him feels different now, and even in sleep, there is a sense of quiet transition, as if time itself is slowly loosening its hold. The Nile flows on. Through darkness that is fading. Through silence that is thinning. Through a world that remains asleep, yet already begins to lean gently toward morning. The night is almost finished now, though it still feels like night. There is a quiet in the air that is different from earlier hours. It is no longer the deep, sealed silence of midnight. It is something softer, something that carries a sense of waiting, as if the world is holding its breath without knowing it. The Nile continues to move through this final part of darkness. Its flow is unchanged, steady as always, but the river now reflects a sky that is slowly opening itself. The stars are still present, though fewer of them feel bright. Some seem to fade into the background of the sky, while others remain gently visible, like distant memories that refuse to disappear all at once. Along the riverbank, the mist is almost gone. Only thin traces remain, drifting low over the water in quiet strands. The reeds stand more clearly now, their shapes no longer swallowed by darkness. They are still, patient, and unmoving, as if they too are waiting for the first full breath of morning. The village remains asleep. But sleep has grown lighter. People lie in familiar positions on their mats, but the deep stillness of earlier hours has softened. Bodies are still resting, still calm, but the sense of being fully lost in sleep has begun to ease, like a tide slowly pulling back from the shore. Inside one home, a man opens his eyes for a brief moment without fully waking. He does not move. He does not rise. He simply lies there, aware for a moment of the quiet around him, the faint coolness in the air, the soft presence of morning not yet arrived but already near. After a few breaths, his eyes close again. Sleep continues. Outside, the wind passes once more, very lightly. It moves through the village without disturbance. It touches the river first, then the fields, then the edges of the desert. It carries a cooler feeling now, different from the night winds that came earlier. This one feels more like transition than motion. Then it fades. The sky above is no longer completely dark. A subtle change has spread across the horizon, a faint and gentle lightning that is still too soft to be called dawn. It is not color yet. Not shape. Only a quiet shift in tone, as if the sky is remembering light even before it returns. The moon is lower now, close to the edge of the world. Its reflection on the Nile stretches long and delicate, thinning as the surface of the water moves. Each ripple breaks the light into small fragments that come together and separate again, endlessly repeating without pattern or hurry. The river remains constant. It does not react to the changing sky. It does not prepare for morning or remember night. It simply continues, carrying the same slow movement through every passing moment. Far inland, the fields begin to show more detail. Shapes that were once lost in darkness now appear clearly enough to recognize. The lines of crops, the paths between them, the gentle unevenness of the land. Everything remains still, but everything is becoming visible again. The desert beyond the fields is no longer completely black. It holds faint gradients of shadow and space, stretching endlessly outward, quiet and unchanged, but no longer hidden. In the village, sleep is at its lightest point. People remain resting, but the sense of deep separation from the world is gone. It is as if their bodies already know what is coming next, even if their minds do not. A child shifts slightly and settles again. A woman draws a cloth closer around her shoulder. A man exhales slowly and becomes still once more. These movements are small, natural, part of the slow return that has not yet fully begun. The old man near the edge of the village remains asleep, unchanged, his breathing steady and even. But the space around him feels different now. The night is no longer the same night that began hours ago. It has thinned. It has softened. It has opened itself quietly toward what is next. The Nile continues its journey through it all. Through fading darkness. Through softening silence. Through a world that has not yet awakened, but is already beginning to feel the presence of morning, arriving slowly, gently, like the river itself, steady and unhurried, carrying everything forward without end. The night is almost gone now, though it still clings gently to the land. It does not disappear all at once. It fades in layers, slowly, as if it is reluctant to leave the quiet world it has held for so many hours. The darkness is thinner now, softer at the edges, allowing the first true signs of morning to begin forming beyond the horizon. The Nile continues its steady movement. It flows as it always has, but the water now carries a different reflection. The sky above it is no longer fully dark. It holds a pale, quiet light that spreads gently across the surface, turning the river into something softer, something almost in between night and day. Along the banks, the reeds are now clearly visible. They stand tall and still, their shapes no longer hidden. Dew gathers lightly on their edges, catching what little light there is and holding it for a moment before it disappears again. Everything near the river feels cool and calm. The village is still asleep. But it is the kind of sleep that is close to waking. Not deep. Not heavy. Just resting. Inside the homes, people lie in familiar silence. The mats are still, the walls unchanged, the air quiet. Yet there is a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a gentle awareness that morning is drawing near even if no one consciously notices it. A man breathes a little deeper and turns slightly onto his back. A child uncurls a bit, releasing the tightness of sleep. A woman opens her eyes briefly, then closes them again without moving. These are the smallest signs of return. Outside, the wind passes once more. It is different now. It carries a cooler freshness, as if it has traveled from far beyond the desert night. It moves gently across the river first, then through the fields, then between the homes of the village. It does not disturb anything. It simply announces, in its own quiet way, that change is near. Then it fades again. The sky continues its slow transformation. The darkness is no longer complete. A faint gradient spreads across it, especially near the horizon, where the first soft light of dawn begins to gather without yet revealing its source. The stars are still visible, but they appear weaker now, less defined, as if they are slowly stepping back into distance. The moon is almost gone. Only a faint remnant of its presence remains, a pale trace that lingers near the edge of the sky before it disappears beyond the horizon. Its reflection on the Nile becomes thinner still, stretching into delicate fragments that break apart easily with every small movement of water. The river continues forward. Always forward. Never stopping. Never changing its rhythm for night or morning. It simply flows through the transition, as it has always done, carrying the world gently between states without resistance. Far inland, the fields begin to take shape in full detail. The outlines of crops are now clear. The paths between them are visible. The soil shows its texture again, no longer hidden in darkness. Everything is still, but everything is returning to sight. The desert beyond stretches wide and silent. But even it is no longer completely dark. The edges of dunes are softening, gaining depth as light slowly begins to find them. In the village, sleep is at its lightest now. It is no longer deep rest. It is waiting. People remain lying down, but their bodies are closer to waking than sleeping. There is a quiet readiness in the air, as if the world itself is preparing to begin again. A few more small movements appear. A hand resting on a mat shifts slightly. A face turns toward the faint cool air entering through a wall opening. A child stirs and then settles. None of these actions break the silence. They belong to it. The old man near the edge of the village finally opens his eyes again. This time he does not close them immediately. He lies still for a moment, looking upward at the dim ceiling, listening to the silence that feels different now. He senses, without needing to think, that the night is nearly over. He does not rise yet. He simply waits. Outside, the Nile continues its endless flow. The water reflects the first real suggestion of dawn, soft and quiet, spreading slowly across its surface. The river does not hurry toward morning. It does not resist night. It simply carries both within its movement. And as the last thin layer of darkness begins to loosen over the land, everything rests in a gentle in-between moment, where night has not fully ended and morning has not yet begun, and the Nile moves steadily through it all, as it always has, through darkness, through light, and through the quiet passage of time itself. The first true hint of morning arrives without sound. It does not come like an event. It does not announce itself. It simply begins, slowly, quietly, spreading across the edge of the world like something unfolding rather than arriving. The sky is still gentle, still soft, but the darkness has now clearly begun to release its hold. The Nile reflects this change with a calm, steady brightness. The water is no longer only a mirror of night. It now holds faint tones of pale blue and soft gray, mixing with the last remaining shadows. Each ripple carries a shifting blend of darkness and light, as if the river itself cannot decide which moment it belongs to. Along the banks, the reeds stand sharper in form. Their outlines are clearer, more defined against the slowly brightening sky. Tiny drops of dew cling to their edges, catching the growing light and releasing it again in small, quiet flashes. The riverbank feels cooler now, touched by the earliest breath of dawn. The village begins to stir. Not all at once. Not quickly. But in scattered, gentle movements that spread through the homes like waves through still water. Sleep does not end suddenly here. It loosens. It fades. It shifts into something lighter, something closer to awareness. Inside one home, a woman opens her eyes fully this time. She remains still for a moment, listening. The silence is different now. It is no longer the deep silence of night. It is the soft silence of early morning, where sound is possible but has not yet returned. She sits up slowly on her mat. Outside, a faint light is visible through the small opening in the wall. Not strong. Not bright. but real. Nearby, a child wakes more fully, rubbing their eyes with small, slow movements. There is no urgency in the room. Only the natural return of awareness. In another house, a man exhales deeply and turns onto his side before finally opening his eyes. The village is waking, but gently, like a body stretching after long rest. Outside, the wind returns briefly. This time it feels clearer. Cleaner. It moves across the river with a cool touch, then through the fields, then between the homes, as if checking the land one final time before the day begins. It carries with it the freshness of early morning, a feeling that belongs neither to night nor fully to day. Then it fades. The sky changes more visibly now. The darkness has thinned enough that shapes are no longer uncertain. A soft gradient of color spreads across the horizon, subtle and gradual, like a quiet unfolding of light beneath the sky. Stars are now faint. Some are barely visible at all. Others remain for a few moments longer before slowly disappearing into the growing brightness. The moon has fully slipped away. Its presence is gone, leaving only the memory of its reflection on the river. The Nile continues its steady movement, unchanged by the passing of night. But now it carries a different kind of light. The surface begins to glow gently, not with brilliance, but with softness. It reflects the early sky in long, calm strokes that move with every ripple. Farther inland, the fields are now fully visible. Every path, every row of crops, every small variation in the land can be seen clearly. The soil looks darker in the morning light, richer, more defined. Nothing moves there yet, but everything feels ready. The desert beyond stretches wide and still. But even its emptiness is no longer hidden. The dunes are shaped clearly now, their curves visible under the early light that begins to spread across them. In the village, more homes are awake. Doors open slowly. People step outside into the cool air of early morning. Sandals touch the ground with soft, familiar sounds. Water jars are lifted. Firewood is gathered. The rhythm of the day begins again, not with noise, but with calm continuation. A fisherman walks toward the river, carrying his nets over one shoulder. A farmer moves toward the fields, adjusting his simple tools. A woman prepares bread once more, the scent of yesterday giving way to the promise of today. Everything resumes, not abruptly, but naturally, as if it had never truly stopped. The old man near the edge of the village finally rises. He moves slowly, carefully, feeling the coolness of the morning air on his skin. He steps outside and looks toward the river, watching the Nile flow through the first full light of dawn. It is the same river as always. Steady. Unchanging. Endless. And as the first full breath of morning settles over the land, the Nile continues its quiet journey, carrying the village, the fields, and the ancient world forward once again into another day, just as it always has, and just as it always will. Morning is now fully present, though it still carries the softness of its beginning. The light is not harsh yet. It spreads gently across the land, touching the river first, then the fields, then the quiet paths between homes. Everything it reaches becomes clearer, more defined, as if the world is slowly remembering its shape after a long night of rest. The Nile moves through this light with steady calm. Its surface now reflects the sky in a soft, open way. Pale blue stretches across it, broken only by small ripples that shift with the current. The river feels awake, but not rushed. It never rushes. It never changes its pace for any hour of the day. Along the banks, life is fully returning. Fishermen are now in the water again, pushing their boats outward with slow, practiced movements. Their nets are folded neatly beside them, ready to be cast. There is no conversation, only the quiet coordination of people who have done this same work countless times. The boats glide forward, leaving soft trails in the water that quickly fade. Near the shore, women and children gather water jars once more. The river is calm enough for easy filling, and the coolness of the water feels especially gentle in the morning air. Each jar is lifted carefully, balanced with practiced ease for the walk back through familiar paths. In the fields, farmers have already begun their work. The soil is cool now, holding the memory of night. It is easier to move through in this hour before the sun grows strong. Oxen stand patiently as wooden plows are guided through the earth, repeating the same steady lines that have been drawn for generations. The work is quiet. Not silent, but steady. The sound of tools meeting soil, the low movement of animals, the soft shifting of footsteps through earth and grass, all of it blends into a rhythm that belongs only to mornings like this. Birds are more active now. They move between reeds and trees, calling softly as they search for food in the early light. Their movement feels lighter than everything else, quick and unburdened, passing above the slow human rhythm below. In the village, bread is already being prepared again. Ovens are lit with small, controlled fires. Dough is shaped with hands that know exactly how much pressure to use. The smell of baking begins to rise once more, mixing with the cool air and drifting through narrow lanes between homes. Smoke curls upward in thin, steady lines. It does not rise quickly. It simply climbs, as if following the same patient rhythm as everything else in the village. Inside one home, a family sits together in the early morning light. The floor is cool beneath them. The air is fresh. They eat slowly, sharing simple food that requires no haste. Bread, a few pieces of fruit, water drawn from the river not long before. No one speaks much. Morning here does not demand conversation. It only asks for presence. Outside, the old man stands near the edge of the village once more. He watches the Nile flow under the full light of morning. The river looks different now than it did in the night. Not changed in nature, but changed in appearance. More open. More visible. Its movement is easier to see, yet still just as calm, just as unhurried. He observes it quietly. Not with surprise. Not with thought of anything beyond the moment. Only with the familiarity of a life lived beside this water. The sun continues to rise higher, slowly warming the land. Shadows shorten. Colors become clearer. The village becomes more active, but never chaotic. Every movement still feels measured, still connected to the rhythm that the river has always set. And the Nile, as always, continues forward. Through morning light. Through daily labor. Through generations of quiet life along its banks. Carrying everything gently, steadily, as it has done since long before memory, and as it will continue to do long after this day becomes another evening resting over the water. The morning settles more deeply into the land now. The light grows a little stronger, but it still carries a softness that keeps everything calm. It spreads across the Nile in wide, gentle bands, making the water look almost like it is breathing with the sky above it. The river continues its endless movement. Nothing about it changes in urgency. It flows with the same patient rhythm it had in the darkest hour of night, now simply revealed more clearly under the growing sun. Small ripples form and dissolve along the surface, never holding their shape for long, always returning to smoothness again. Along the banks, the village feels fully awake. Not in a sudden way, but in layers that have slowly built up since dawn. Now there is steady activity everywhere, yet it is still quiet in its own way. The sounds of morning are familiar, not loud, woven naturally into the life of the place. Footsteps along narrow paths. Water being poured from jars. Soft conversations between neighbors. The faint crackle of small cooking fires. Everything belongs. Nothing feels out of place. Near the river, fishermen continue their work. Their boats are now slightly farther from shore, drifting gently as nets are lowered into the water. The movement is slow and practiced, guided more by memory than by speech. Each gesture is part of something repeated so many times that it has become almost silent in meaning. The river accepts the nets without resistance. It moves around them, through them, beneath them, never disturbed in its flow. On the shore, children watch for a short while before being called back toward their homes. Their attention drifts easily between the water and the village behind them. Even their curiosity feels calm this early in the day. In the fields, the work continues. Farmers walk between rows of crops, checking the soil, adjusting irrigation channels, guiding water where it is needed most. The earth is still cool from the night, making it easier to shape and manage. Oxen stand patiently nearby, their breathing slow and even. The rhythm of farming remains unchanged from season to season, generation to generation. There is no rush in it. Only repetition, care, and understanding of the land. Above the fields, birds move in small clusters. They follow the lines of irrigation, pause near patches of grain, then lift again into the air. Their calls are light, scattered, never forming a single continuous sound. They come and go like thoughts that never stay in one place for long. Back in the village, daily life deepens into routine. Women prepare food for the day ahead, grinding grain, kneading dough, tending to small cooking fires. The smell of bread is now a constant presence, drifting through the air like a quiet thread connecting homes together. Children move between spaces, helping where they can. Carrying small objects. Fetching water. Watching older family members work. Learning not through instruction, but through observation. Inside one shaded courtyard, an older woman sits beside a wall, weaving linen with steady hands. Her movements are slow but precise. The threads pass through her fingers with practiced familiarity. Each motion is part of something she has done for years, something that requires no explanation anymore. The fabric grows little by little. A quiet record of time made visible through patience. At the riverbank, the old man stands again. He does not move much. He simply watches. The Nile in morning light feels familiar to him in a way that goes beyond thought. It is not something he observes as new each day, but something that exists as a constant presence in his life, like breathing, like waking, like resting. The water flows past him. Unchanged. Unending. The sun continues its rise, now a little higher, warming the edges of the village more clearly. Shadows shorten further, and the land begins to settle fully into the rhythm of daytime. And through it all, the Nile remains steady. Carrying the morning forward. Carrying the village, the fields, and the quiet lives along its banks. Not rushing. Not stopping. Just moving, as it always has, through light, through time, and through the endless calm of a world that continues beside it. The day now rests fully in its middle rhythm, where morning has settled and the heat of the sun begins to build slowly across the land. Light spreads evenly over everything along the Nile. It is no longer soft like early dawn, but it is not yet harsh. It sits in a balanced state, touching the river, the fields, and the village with a steady brightness that feels familiar to everyone who lives here. The Nile continues its quiet movement. It reflects the sky in a shifting blend of pale blue and light gold, depending on where the eye looks. The surface is never still, but its movement is so gentle that it feels more like a constant presence than an action. Water glides past the same points of land it has touched for thousands of years. Along the riverbank, the village has entered full daily life. People move with purpose, but not with haste. Everything is done in a rhythm that has been learned over generations. There is no need for urgency. The day is long, and every task has its place within it. Fishermen have begun returning with early catches. Their boats drift back toward shore, carrying baskets that hold fish glistening in the morning light. The movement is unhurried. Each boat finds its place along the bank as ropes are secured and nets are gathered carefully to dry. On land, small exchanges begin. Fish is carried toward homes. Water jars are refilled. Simple goods are traded between neighbors with quiet understanding. In the fields, the sun is now higher, and the soil begins to warm. Farmers continue their work beneath it, adjusting to the rising heat. Their movements are steady, shaped by years of experience. Some pause briefly in the shade of palm trees, drinking water from clay jars before returning to the fields. The oxen stand under partial shade when possible, resting between tasks. Their presence is patient, their breathing slow, as they wait for the next movement of the plow. Birds are now more scattered across the landscape. Some move low over the water, others rest in trees near the fields. Their calls rise and fall in uneven patterns, never forming a single sound, but always present in the background of the day. Inside the village, work continues in quiet layers. A potter shapes clay on a spinning wheel, his hands steady and coated with fine dust. The clay rises and forms slowly into bowls and vessels that will be used in homes along the river. Each piece begins as something soft and unformed. Each one becomes something useful through time and patience. Nearby, a carpenter works under a simple shaded structure. Wood is measured, cut, and smoothed. The sound of tools striking material is soft but consistent, blending into the background of daily life without interruption. In another part of the village, a scribe sits in a quiet space, writing carefully on papyrus. His hand moves with precision. Each mark is deliberate. The records he keeps are not for display or attention, but for memory, for order, for the quiet structure of daily life that depends on written detail. Outside, children play near shaded areas of the village. Their movements are lighter than the adults around them, but even their play feels calm, shaped by the environment they grow up in. They run briefly, then slow, then gather again, always staying within the familiar boundaries of home. Near the river, the old man sits once more in his usual place. He watches the Nile as it moves through the middle of the day. The light is brighter now, clearer. The river shows more detail in its surface, more texture in its movement. Yet it remains unchanged in essence. It flows as it always has, without effort, without pause. He does not speak. He does not think in words. He simply observes. The sun continues to rise higher into the sky, warming the land more steadily now. The village adjusts naturally, moving from morning work into midday rhythm. Everything slows slightly under the increasing heat, but nothing stops. And through all of it, the Nile continues forward, carrying water from distant places, carrying the lives of those who depend on it, carrying the same quiet continuity that has shaped this land for longer than memory can reach. The heat of the day settles more deeply over the land now, not harsh yet, but steady and full, like a quiet weight resting across everything along the Nile. The sun stands higher in the sky, and its light spreads without hesitation. It touches the river in wide reflections that shimmer gently with every small movement of water. The surface of the Nile feels almost like polished glass in some places, and in others like slow-moving silk, always shifting, never still. The village continues its steady rhythm beneath this light. But the pace has softened slightly. Not because work has stopped, but because the body learns to move differently under the warmth of midday. Steps become more measured. Hands rest more often in brief pauses. Conversations are quieter, shorter, carried out in the shade whenever possible. The Nile itself remains unchanged. It does not respond to heat or light. It flows as it always has, carrying coolness within its depth even as the surface reflects the growing warmth of the sun. Along the riverbank, boats now rest more often than they move. Some are tied firmly to wooden posts driven into the earth. Others drift slightly in place, held by ropes that keep them close to shore. Nets hang in long, drying lines, catching the faint breeze that passes through the reeds. The fishermen sit in small groups beneath shade. They do not rush. They speak occasionally, but mostly they rest, letting the midday hours pass with patience learned over a lifetime of living beside the river. In the fields, the work continues, but with slower intervals. Farmers tend to irrigation channels, guiding water carefully so it reaches the crops without waste. The soil is warm now underfoot, and dust rises gently with each step before settling again. Oxen stand still for longer periods, their heads lowered slightly, conserving energy as the sun grows stronger. Birds move higher in the sky now, avoiding the heat near the ground. Their calls are fewer, more distant, as if even sound itself has softened under the midday sun. Inside the village, life turns inward. Homes offer shade from the brightest part of the day. Walls of mud brick hold a steady coolness inside, protecting those who rest within. Some people lie down for short periods of sleep. Others simply sit quietly, breathing slowly, letting the heat pass without resistance. In one home, a woman sits near a doorway where light and shade meet. She weaves slowly, her hands moving in a familiar rhythm. The motion is gentle, requiring no force, only attention. The fabric she creates grows little by little, thread by thread, under her careful guidance. Nearby, a child rests on the floor, half asleep, listening to the distant sounds of the village without needing to understand them. A pot of water sits in the shade, slowly warming but still cool enough to drink. Outside, the air above the fields shimmers faintly in the heat. The horizon appears slightly softened, as if the distance itself is resting. The Nile remains the center of everything. Even in the strongest part of the day, it feels different from the land around it. The water holds a sense of depth and coolness that contrasts with the warmth of the air. It is always moving, always present, always offering a sense of calm continuity. Near the river, the old man sits in his usual place once more. He does not move much in the heat. He simply watches the water pass by, the reflections shifting slowly across its surface. The river feels familiar to him in every condition: morning, night, and now midday. Each state shows a different face, but the same presence remains beneath it all. He adjusts his position slightly, finding shade where the riverbank allows it. His breathing is slow, even, unhurried. The day continues around him, but he remains in quiet observation. Farther away, a group of children gathers in the shade of palm trees, speaking softly and occasionally laughing before settling again into silence. Even their energy feels softened by the heat, as if the entire village has entered a shared rhythm of rest and activity. The sun continues its steady climb, and the land beneath it holds steady in response. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. Everything moves in balance with the heat, with the light, with the river that continues its endless journey through the center of it all. And through this long, warm hour of the day, the Nile flows on, unchanged in spirit, carrying the stillness of water through the stillness of land, as life along its banks continues in a quiet, enduring rhythm shaped by time, heat, and the gentle patience of the river itself. The afternoon begins its slow turn toward evening, though the change is so gradual it feels almost like imagination at first. The sun still holds its place high, but the light no longer feels as sharp as it did earlier. There is a softness returning to the edges of the world. Shadows, once short and tight beneath the heat of midday, begin to stretch again, growing longer across the fields and village paths. The Nile continues its quiet passage through this changing light. Its surface reflects a shifting mix of brightness and calm shadow, as if the river is holding both afternoon and evening within itself at the same time. The water moves steadily, without interruption, carrying small ripples that dissolve almost as soon as they appear. Along the banks, life adjusts once more. The strongest heat of the day has begun to ease, and with it, movement returns in small waves. People step out from shaded homes and resting places, rejoining the rhythm of work that continues until the sun lowers further. Fishermen begin to prepare their nets again. Not with urgency, but with quiet familiarity. Hands untangle rope. Boats are checked. The river is watched with calm attention, as if it might speak through its surface before the next cast. In the fields, farmers return to their tasks. The soil, still warm from midday, is easier to work now that the sun is slightly less intense. Water channels are adjusted again, guiding the Nile's gift carefully across the land. Every movement remains steady, shaped by experience rather than instruction. Oxen step forward once more, pulling tools through the earth in slow, deliberate lines. Birds reappear closer to the ground as the heat lessens. They move between reeds and fields with renewed energy, their calls gently returning to the landscape like soft threads of sound. Inside the village, doors open wider. The air feels lighter now. Women step outside to tend small tasks near their homes, washing clay vessels, arranging food, preparing evening ingredients in advance. The scent of bread returns faintly as early preparation for the next meal begins. Children move more freely again. Their energy returns with the cooling air, though still softened by the memory of heat. They gather near shaded paths and open spaces, speaking in quiet bursts, then falling into silence again. The rhythm of the village is always like this. It rises. It rests. It returns. Near the river, the old man remains in his familiar place. He watches the Nile as it moves through the changing light of the afternoon. He has seen this transition countless times, yet it never feels repetitive to him. Each day carries its own version of the same slow turning, the same gentle shift from heat toward calm. The river reflects the sky above him, now slightly less bright, carrying a deeper tone in its movement. He leans forward a little, resting his hands against his knees. The sound of water remains constant, a soft presence that never fully fades. Farther along the riverbank, boats begin to move again, slowly drifting back into use as the day prepares for its later hours. Nets are gathered, ropes are checked, and the familiar cycle continues without interruption. The fields stretch wide under the afternoon light. The crops stand steady, their colors deepening slightly as the sun lowers. Dust rises occasionally with footsteps, then settles again into stillness. The desert beyond the fields remains quiet and vast, unchanged by the passing hours. It holds its silence as it always does, watching the river valley from a distance without movement or sound. And through all of this, the Nile continues its steady flow. It does not mark the passing of afternoon or evening. It does not change its rhythm for heat or coolness. It simply moves forward, carrying the land beside it through every hour, through every shift of light, through every quiet moment that passes without needing to be noticed. As the day gently leans toward its final stretch, everything along the river continues in calm motion and quiet rest, held together by the same endless, patient current that has shaped life here since time beyond memory. The light begins to fade in a slow and gentle way, as if the day itself is lowering its voice. Evening arrives over the Nile without ceremony. There is no clear moment when it begins. Only a gradual softening of brightness, a quiet cooling of the air, and a long stretch of shadows moving back across the land that has been awake since dawn. The river reflects this change first. The surface of the Nile turns from bright gold into a softer, deeper tone. The water still moves with the same steady patience, but now it carries the colors of dusk instead of the sharp clarity of day. Each ripple feels slower, more relaxed, as if the river is also settling into rest. Along the banks, the village begins to slow. Work does not stop suddenly. It simply eases. Tools are set down. Nets are gathered. Boats are pulled closer to shore. The movements are familiar, repeated so many times across generations that they require almost no thought. People return from fields along the same narrow paths they walked in the morning. Their steps are slower now, shaped by the weight of the day. Not exhaustion in a harsh sense, but the quiet heaviness that comes from honest labor under the sun. The fields behind them grow still once more, waiting for the night to pass over them again. Inside the village, small lights begin to appear. Oil lamps are lit one by one, not to push away darkness, but simply to make space for evening life. Their glow is soft, contained, and warm. It touches walls of mud brick and woven reed, making the homes feel smaller, closer, more connected. The smell of evening cooking rises gently through the air. Bread, grains, simple stews prepared without hurry. The same food that has been shared in countless evenings before this one. Nothing about it is new, and yet it is always enough. Children settle down near their families. Voices grow quieter. Movement slows. The energy of the day does not vanish, it dissolves, gently, into rest. Outside, the Nile continues its eternal movement. Now it carries the final reflections of sunset. Thin lines of orange and fading blue stretch across the water, breaking apart and reforming with every shift of the current. The river does not hold on to any single moment. It lets everything pass through it. A few fishermen remain near the shore, sitting in silence beside their boats. They are not working now. Only waiting. Only watching the water as it darkens again. The same water they have known since childhood. The same water their parents once watched in the same light. Farther inland, the fields are now still. The crops stand quietly in the cooling air. The soil holds the memory of the day's heat, slowly releasing it into the evening. The land does not feel empty. It feels complete, as if it has finished what it needed to do for today. The sky above the Nile deepens gradually. First into soft twilight. Then into a deeper blue. And finally toward the return of night, where stars will slowly appear once again, one by one, as they always have. The village becomes quieter with each passing moment. Footsteps fade. Conversations become fewer. Doors close softly. Oil lamps remain the only steady signs of life, scattered like small points of warmth across the darkness forming between homes. The old man sits once more near the river. He watches the Nile as it moves through evening light, just as he has watched it in morning, in midday, in countless days that have already become memory. He does not speak. He does not try to hold on to anything. He simply watches the water pass. And the river continues. It always continues. Through morning and evening, through heat and coolness, through life and rest, through generations that come and go along its banks. The Nile does not remember individual days. It remembers only movement. Only flow. Only time itself passing gently through the land. As night begins to settle again over the ancient world, the river carries everything forward: fields, villages, voices, silences, until they all become part of the same quiet rhythm once more. And in that rhythm, there is no ending. Only the soft return of stillness. Only the river continuing on.